employee management issues, they've been around with us ever since the first company began, when there's two people working together. When it comes down to management, really the responsibility means trying to produce a profit, and it includes making hard decisions, and that's not always popular with employees, of course. To have to deal with the issues requires open discussion, goodwill, and compromise. The very first place that I worked, we had a union to deal with. I rolled in as the director of facilities and transportation at the Fitzgerald Public Schools. The year before, they had 63 grievances. A grievance is when union members file something against management saying they violated the contract. I walked in not quite knowing what I was getting into. That year, we had 3 grievances the first year. Second year I was there, we had 1. It really came down to trying to work together to really have open discussion, goodwill, and compromise. Unions today and yesterday, let's talk about some of the aspects. A lot of times unions form because management is viewed by the employees as not treating them well. And frankly, sometimes it's accurate. Unions, part of their function is protect employees from bad work conditions, unfair treatment, and some secure the operation of their jobs. A lot of times they've lost economic and political power, and their membership has declined today. We'll talk more about this and go through, especially here. Right now, union membership in the public sector stands at 34%, but in the private sector, which is the biggest part of the entire economy, only at 6.2%. So you're looking at huge numbers. Overall, unions represent barely 10% of the American population as a whole. So you're looking at really a large differences going back to the heyday when they're 24, 25% of the population down to a fraction of who they were. We'll see what happens in the days to come over the next several years. There are a lot of things that happen. Really, if you go back in this picture, it's a real picture of children working in the workplace. A lot of the different things that help transform America, help build the middle class, so to speak, really came from the unions being very active and working against unsafe working conditions and a series of things. And we're going to talk in this chapter about that as well. The history really came as early as 1792. Well, we had a series of craft unions. Some people claim you can actually trace it back to the early part of the 1700s, and even some back over into England back into 1500s. So it depends how far you want to go back. For the most part, we do know for a fact that there was a craft union in 1792. We also know that over the years, a lot of trade crafts, they would sit down and have unions or guilds, and that really is where the rules were. Work weeks were often 60 hours, wages low, and child labor was rampant. Having child labor back in the 1700s and the 1800s was very common. And if you had children, you would typically have a lot of them because not all of them would live to adulthood. There is even a place in Ireland that for a period of 5 years, that all the children that were born, they would end up working in the mines. And at one point, there were no children at all 12 years old and older because of mine collapse. So you have all kinds of things with children in the workplace, people working 60, 70 hours a week on a regular basis. Back in 1911, a series of women, young women, 13 to 23, they perished in a fire at the Triangle Waist Shirt Company. Prior to the fire, the workers they had a strike, they wanted higher pay, short hours, safer working conditions, and really this sparked a huge push for unionization. You'll see also days to come after that there was another case in Chicago with a riot with the Ford Motor Company where they had Ford waded in with guards armed with blackjacks, and they beat and killed 7 different rioters. You had all kinds of major labor unrest in the early 1900s. And by the time it was all done, you had 2 unions that really rose to the top of the heap, so to speak, was Knights of Labor and also the American Federation of Labor. Later on, the American Federation of Labor merged with the CIO, or the Congressional of Industrial Organization. So we now call it the AFL-CIO. The AFL-CIO, I want you to remember the name because that is what we call an umbrella union, that it has about 12.5 million members in it and represents numerous unions in the process, with 55 of them actually being part of it and accepting them as a leader for their organization. It's a very powerful union, especially in Washington, D.C. There's a whole series of things that happen in the process. We'll talk about that. But of all things that happened, especially, we call it collective bargaining, which means that the union wins the right to represent the employee's interests, and they have a legal right to meet on their behalf with management to talk about 3 different topics: wages, hours, and working conditions. So we'll talk more about that as we go through. But unions have their roots really officially back in the early 1700s, but really it began its real activism here in the United States in the 1900s. The AFL-CIO is the umbrella union and is by far the largest, and that unions engage in employer-employee relations to represent the employees to the employer, and that collective bargaining is a major function of unions. So we'll talk more as we go through. In the meantime, take care.